Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me once again, as always, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on is Cameron has finished Shadow of the Erdtree, finished all the DLC stuff there. I don't know if you've taken out all the bosses, but we'll chat about that as we go. So we'll kind of have his, quote unquote final impressions on that. He's which also means he's been able to spend some more time with Dawntrail, Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail. So we'll get some updated thoughts on that from him. And then on my side of the world, the last few weeks, pretty much since I would say the Summer Game Fest stuff where Dragon Age The Veilguard kind of got shown off, it prompted me to revisit Dragon Age Inquisition. So I'll give some kind of updated thoughts on that one and revisiting that ahead of the next game, seeing how that, almost 10-year-old game holds up and all that stuff. And also I jumped into Unicorn Overlord from Vanillaware a couple nights ago. So I will share some thoughts on that. So lots of game talk for you this week. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. So Cam, kick us off as the last couple episodes, which, have been a nice little spike up in clicks, at least on YouTube and maybe listens and stuff on the audio version, have been a lot of your thoughts on Shadow of the Erdtree. Now that you've finished it, how you feeling about it? How'd you feel about the final stuff? Do we want to do full-blown spoiler stuff here, or is this going to be kind of a spoiler-free? Where are you thinking? Where are we at here? How should I describe this episode, and do I need to put spoiler tags on it?
I would say, to give you a very early impression, spoiler-free, Shadow of the Erdtree is the perfect ending to Elden Ring. I think that there could be a few other things they do to kind of tie in the DLC a little bit closer to the end of the game, but for what it is, and there are still some lingering questions that will likely be lingering forever because that's how From Software games work. I will say that it is a tremendous finale to an already great game. Easily with this DLC, it puts it in the top, easily top 20 games of all time, if not further up. Where it lands in my top 20 of all time is tough to say, but without a doubt, Elden Ring DLC deserves the applause that it's been getting. 10 out of 10s out of 10 out of 10s across the board from people. The amount of care and effort that they put into making sure that this DLC, they were only going to be doing one, and they needed to make sure that it fired on all cylinders and it hit every mark it was trying to hit, and they successfully did that. I think that there may be some people who digress a little bit, but honestly, I can say that even after beating it, some of my thoughts have been, well, what if I go back and do it with this one? So
that was what your thoughts were last week, where yeah. I don't think I'm going to beat it. I think I'm just going to go back and do it with another character. You did not. You actually finished it with the character that you'd been playing through it with. But yeah, you're I imagine much like Elden Ring last year for you, which when you were doing your platinum hunt and after the grind, and after I got you back into it when we did our attempted run, you went through 3 different playthroughs at that point of Elden Ring. Then you went immediately into 3 different playthroughs of Armored Core 6. So I imagine this is pretty much the game you'll be continuing to play for the next few months, also juggling in Dawntrail and whatever else until some of the big fall games probably come out. You're just going to keep playing Shadow of the Erdtree more and more. Yeah.
Yep. I think the biggest takeaway for me on this is it will continue to be a game that I enjoy for years to come. I don't think I've had this much enjoyment out of a From Software game since Dark Souls. I've beaten Dark Souls several times.
It's a fun joke I was going to crack when you were like, there are still some lingering questions that maybe will never be answered. And I was like, wait until somebody finds the link from Dark Souls that ties it all together. Yeah. It turns out Elden Ring is a prequel to Dark Souls or something.
That's already
some bullshit like that.
That's already been somewhat established along with Bloodborne and everything else.
Of course.
The unification that Elden Ring is the foundation of all From Software like games based off the ending, like that's all been pre-theorized.
Sure.
That's already happened.
And Armored Core is just a super far in the future version of
Armored Core, because Armored Core the series predates any from like any Soulsborne game. Like it kind of is like in its own category.
Yeah, I was.
That being said, I understand what you were saying though. Be a bit facetious there, but the idea of this game and what it's accomplished, I think, is tremendous, and it blows my mind that Miyazaki is still saying like I still haven't made my ideal fantasy game. The man's insane. Purely insane. Must be to give us the Fire Giant as a meat to beat boss. Yeah, I really do believe that this is and like this is the thing. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. 10 out of 10, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Our the that nerdy site scale is a 10, 20 point scale kind of thing. 10 out of 10 would be we put it a 5 that out of 5. That phenomenal game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely that phenomenal game. It continues to be. The DLC is on its own large enough to be its own game. And the fact that it's just a DLC content, easily worth the $40 price tag for it, easily worth it with what it adds between weapons, equipment, armor, exploration zones, fights. It's tremendous in what it does. And how it decided, how do you handle an open world scaling system when you're introducing new content past the base game? How do you scale it correctly? And
how do you balance it for people who are doing it on the first playthrough versus the new game plus playthrough?
Exactly. It is true. Like the balancing act that this DLC had to accomplish, and the fact that they did it, they nailed it 100%, maybe 95% depending on who you ask. But really, I look at this, and for people out there who are like, it's too hard, I hear you. I literally was on the last boss for such a long time, and I
better part of the last week.
Yep. And I literally spent all my time figuring out ways to adjust my build, maybe use a different build. But one thing I will say is I'm very proud of myself is that I never respec for this. I did not respec for the final boss. I went in with the build that I had throughout most of Erdtree. And for that, I'm very proud of myself. I've only respec once for Erdtree, and it was so that I could get a build that was a bit more adjustable based on a lot of different parameters that I was encountering. So I was not locked in just one weapon type. And I was successfully able to do it this time with, I'm about to get into some more details here.
I'm going to be putting a spoiler tag on this.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So spoilers, Radon is back. This time his soul has been placed into Moog's body by Mikola, and he is the meanest motherfucker from software history. I have never faced a boss that is more difficult than this boss.
Makes sense why you needed to beat Moog to get to the the
Moog,
DLC.
People already assumed Moog because that's where Mikola's body was. You never beat Moog, so you don't know. And you never went into the Halig tree or anything, so you don't know. In the lore, Moog, who is the brother of Morgott, he's one of the Omen twins. You fought Morgott. He was the dude who at Stormville Castle, who then showed up again in Lanedale, the capital, and he's like
oh, he's the guy that he was like the first boss that we took out and then came back later.
Revealed his true name, unleashed we pushed him into a corner. He unleashed his Omen blood by revealing his sword that he'd sealed his Omen blood into. Really cool.
You died, but I still killed him.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
It was close. Man, that was an awesome fight. You had some peak awesome moments in that game, and I really suggest people go back and watch. Even though it's never going to be a finished series, it is a tremendous, you did such a great job in it.
If I think about it, I'll put the thing in the box in the top right corner. Yeah. I'll link that episode.
It was one of the best things. So Moog is Morgott's brother, who instead of sealing away his Omen blood, he indulged in it and contacted another outer being, yada yada. You don't care about this. Point being is that he absconded with, and for a long time we thought he was kidnapping his brother, his half brother Mikola, who was encased in a cocoon, and we thought he kidnapped him to then use him to ascend to essentially becoming an Elden Lord type level character, top level tier, status, basically. I'm not going to go into the details about it. Mikla's an Empyrean. You don't care. So when you beat Mog, or when you go to Mog's arena, Mikla's arm falls down, and so like Mikla's there, and so like we knew Mikla was there. Why we didn't know is why did we have to beat Radahn? We did not know that, and now we do. Radahn is, it turns out, the promised consort of Mikla. There's a lot of theory crafting still going on about it. My personal theory is this. Radahn was, as a member of the Carrion bloodline, means his destiny is written in the stars. He was destined to become Mikla's consort, chose to stop it, which is why he stopped the stars in the sky. The question about, like, why did Radahn challenge the stars has always been brought up. Some people thought it was about his sister Ranni, but my personal theory is that to prevent Ranni from having to become an Empyrean and himself from having to become a consort, he challenged the stars and stopped them in the sky with his gravity magic.
Sure. Yeah. Fight destiny, stop time.
Yep,
yeah.
Pretty much. And so he stopped the stars, and then, which is a cool note, by the way, also one of the touches of From Software is that before you beat Radahn, the night sky doesn't ever really change. And then after you beat Radahn, the night sky changes all the time. So shout out to their touch of detail on that. But so that's my personal theory. After beating Radahn, his body, and so the whole point of Radahn needing to be killed was so that his soul could be taken to the land of shadow, which is kind of like a drain where a lot of the stuff in the world, the realm, or the land between, gets kind of filtered out to when they die. It kind of passes through the land of shadow because of where the land of shadow is sealed. You don't need to know that, but the point about it basically being is for Mikla to ascend to godhood the way that Mikla wanted to, Mikla needed a consort, and Mikla's consort wanted Radahn to be his consort because Radahn's a badass, borderline unstoppable, awesome. Also very inspired. People love Radahn. Mikla, because of Radahn's actions, Mikla sends his sister to try to assassinate Radahn, or just convince Radahn to accept his fate as consort. Failing to do that, she unleashes her Scarlet Rot, which is in the intro cutscene to Elden Ring. What is unexpected, though, is that Radahn fights off the Rot enough to survive, but brain dead. Eating corpses, like you saw it in the cutscene going into fighting Radahn. He's eating corpses, he's not mentally there anymore, which is why the Radahn Festival happens. His followers are we need to put an end to, let Radahn rest. Works as a backup anyway for Mikla, because if Radahn dies, his soul goes to the in-between, the world, from the land between to the land of shadows. So Mikla just needs a body, at which point Mohg comes into effect. Mohg is charmed by Mikla to assume that he can use Mikla to ascend to godhood himself, but is instead challenged by the Tarnished. We kill Mohg, and then that leads into the Land of Shadow thing where we're following Mikla's footsteps to get to figure out what's going on, what's Mikla's plan. Different kind of based on what your strategy and the quest that you've completed and kind of how you've been going out playing the game, you might have different headcanon reasons for it, but essentially you get to a point where you reach the point where you have to kill Mesmer, who is one of my favorite new characters. Very tragic character. My personal theory, for anybody who's wondering, is I believe he's the firstborn of Radagon and Marika, but before she married Godfrey. That's my note. I think he's the eldest of all the siblings, and it predates Godfrey. That being said, you kill him, get his flame, light the shadow tree that's sealing the gate to godhood. Doing so lets Mikla ascend to godhood, claim Radahn as his consort, and then we have to fight him first as his promised consort self, where he's in his prime, and then afterwards as an Elden Lord, as the promised consort, as the full on ultimate being, basically. And you have to take him out, and he is relentless, powerful, and unrelenting, and takes so much, but eventually I beat him. Such a brutal fight, and Mikla can suck it. Not cool. Turns out Mikla's just not a cool dude. Turns out to be imagine Gaslight girl boss, but to like a like demigod degree, Mikla kind of sucks. Overall, phenomenal journey, incredible bosses, like some of the best bosses they've ever had. Shout out to Rolana, who is the sister of Renala, who is a boss who doesn't even have an intro cutscene, who has hard stopped more people than like any other boss. Like, that is 100%. I don't know how many times I fought her because I was so entranced with her fight that I just kept going back to it, kept doing it over and over again and just getting incrementally better to the point where I beat her. I can't tell you how many times I fought her. I don't know how long it took me to fight her.
Mm-hmm.
I was just so lost in the sauce on how to beat her and fighting her. And I love that boss fight. It is one of my favorites of all time. It is a little bit of that unrelenting, but enough of like pattern recognition to really nail down that fight. And her second phase, she ignites, she uses twin swords. One alights with holy flame, the other with magical ability. And she does like magical slashes through the air that like goes at you. She also drops twin moons on you. Like, incredible fight, incredible boss. Her weapons were so incredibly cool that I literally respect myself so that I could use them appropriately. Those are the weapons that I used for the majority of the game.
That's the dual katana, right?
Not katana, they're dual longswords, but yeah. Okay. They're particularly just very, very cool. God, I just love those swords so much, and it fit the build that I really wanted to use. And kind of like, shout out to Fextra Life for putting together all the different build guides and everything. Your guide on this one was amazing. I cleared most of the game with it. There's a couple of bosses where it just doesn't work weapon-wise for that boss, and so I had to adjust with a different kind of weapon. But the best part about that build is that I could make those adjustments and make it work. Including against Radahn, who I needed to use the thrusting shield against because I'm just not good enough to beat Radahn in a second phase with my regular weapons. And so I had to use like literally the cheapest skill in the game, which is still like totally viable, totally normal. And in the words of Miyazaki, the resources of the game are there for you to be able to get through fights no matter what. So whatever kind of weapons you use, whatever kind of items you use, whatever you use, like, they're there for a reason. Use them. So yeah, overall amazing game, 10 out of 10.
I mean, I'm going to, was it a quote? Our friend Andy Cortez, I think, said something to the effect of, if you can't beat them with no weapons and your controller up your ass, then you're playing on easy mode. I think is, yeah, unless you beat Elden Ring with no weapons while your controller is shoved up your ass, you're playing on easy mode. I appreciate that I had that almost verbatim. Thank you, Andy.
Yep.
So we talked about last week that you were kind of at that final boss fight.
Yeah.
Did you just kind of like keep pushing through with that and like, you know, tweaking your build and stuff like that? Or were there other bosses that you went around, you were able to kind of take out and eliminate? You didn't get the full Skidoo tree stats, right?
No, I did not. And it turns out after I beat Radahn, there was still one major boss that I forgot that I had to go and fight. And so I went and fought that boss, and way easier. Like, way easier.
Sure. Have you gone back to, because this is the character you said that that you had not beaten the game with, but you did go and just kind of like, after you beat Radahn, you went and like just finished the regular game, right?
Yeah, this is the same character.
Yeah.
After I did that, then I went and beat Gale, who is a dragon boss. Beat him. Only needed 3 times to beat him. The first time I was just like, I was trying to unlock a mechanism for that fight that I did completely wrong. And so I was like basically almost dead by the time I activated it. Second time was real close to beating him, but just like made some critical errors.
You had clearly already beaten the fire giant with this character though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Because otherwise, I imagine this would be a very different story.
Yeah, this was one that I had a hard time beating the fire giant with. I mean, the only time I've ever had an easy time doing it is with one of my builds, the one that I'm in Journey 3 with. Like, I finished 3 journeys with. That is like just an unbelievably like not complex, very straightforward strength faith build, and beat him unintentionally first try. Like, did not mean to do it, or I think it was like second try. and just kind of like had a perfect run with that character. So not really the like necessarily like a fair assessment of that fight, but you know.
So how many other bosses are out there that you didn't go through in the Shadow of the Erdtree stuff?
Oh, just that one.
Just
I
that
beat
one?
every other
So
major
you did
boss.
take out every other boss?
Yeah, every other major boss I've defeated.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What's like major versus minor versus like overworld? Is there
Um,
are there other things that are still out there for you to kill?
Yes,
Okay.
for sure. There are some like minor bosses, like jail bosses and other things like that, like some very like minor things that are still out there. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust my work laptop so I'm not like running into it with my elbow. Yeah, there's like minor bosses out there, like some stuff that like crypts and stuff that I could still go to and like clear out. But I've pretty much done everything I wanted to. So.
Okay. Then yeah, are you is the next thing on the docket for you to jump into one of your other kind of pre-existing characters and go through this and, you know, see how you do with different builds? Or
Not right now, no. I think
No.
I'm going to dedicate my time mostly. I've dedicated my time mostly to Dawntrail.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I get like I'm asking in a broader sense. Yeah, you're probably going to focus on Dawntrail for a little while and stuff like that. But if you're jumping back to this game just to
Oh, I'm going straight for like my magic build to see how far I can take a magic build in this game.
Gotcha.
My magic build is a little under leveled, so I'll need to up that level a bit. Because even with where the like recommended level is like 150, and this character, my magic character is like 108. Still beat Moog, still beat Radon. I can still like do that, but I do want to do some more like choice decisions to increase my level on that one.
Sure.
That is a full-on like magic build that I built out to try to get an understanding of how you were playing, to get a better way of like knowing how to strategize the fire giant around you. But then you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And so I just had this character, and so I've just been like clearing out magic stuff with this character.
I mean, my strat for leveling the character up is going to be go kill that bird a lot of times.
Oh yeah,
That's pretty much what I was doing. So yeah, there you go.
well, there's that bird, and then there's the Obinox on the right hand side. That if you like clear out that area, it's like easy 40k per.
Sure.
So
Cool. All right. Any final thoughts then on Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree before we move on to Dawntrail?
Yeah. Gosh, there's a really cool piece of art that I really hope somebody turns into like a really cool wallpaper at some point of like a version of your Tarnished in the same kind of like format as Radon with as the consort of Mikla, where Mikla is like draped across him, but with Ronnie. It's a really cool piece of art, but that I just really love, and I would love to have it actually as like a poster or something.
Is this something like a fan art?
Fan
thing
art that somebody did, where it's like it's just really really cool. It's the last thing that I want to mention is like.
Do you know the artist?
I don't, because they don't have their name in English, and I don't read the. I believe it's in Chinese, or it's in Chinese or Japanese. I know it's a. I forgot the correct term for it, but essentially it's that character style.
Yeah.
It looks very complex, so I'd assume it's Chinese. But yeah, I might be wrong on that. But it was just their name is not in English or in like a way that I can pronounce. But massive shout out to them. If you haven't seen it, it's Tarnished, promised consort of the stars.
If you have it in a digital format and want to send it over to me, I'll put it as part of the thumbnail. And if you have the user, either like a Twitter handle or something like that I can try and credit them as, do that too.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Okay, cool fan arty things that you want done in, grand epic scale. Excellent. You don't have to do it right now, Cam.
No, I literally had it pulled up in another tab, so I was just pulling it up so I don't forget about it.
Okay. Well, then let's pop over, sticking with you, to the other thing that, you jumped over to and have put more time into now that you are an Elden Lord once again. Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail. When we talked about it last time, you'd kind of used your early access time to focus on like leveling up the Viper character and kind of going through their side quest stuff. You hadn't really done too much of the main story quest stuff, the MSQ as it is. What what's that dynamic changed? Are you now doing MSQ stuff?
Yeah, I'm fully in the MSQ at this point. It's interesting. They're doing it a little bit differently this time. Instead of like having you go to like one area at a time and kind of clearing out that entire area, they're doing it a little bit different where, so first you end up in the new capital city, Tulial. I'm probably mispronouncing it, but it's essentially this really awesome, cool Mesoamerican inspired city that has just awesome architecture, awesome designs.
So you have made it across the
Oh
sea.
yeah, I'm across the salt. Yeah, that's what they say. Like you came across the salt. So came across. It's a beautiful, beautiful landscape. The architecture of the new city is incredibly cool and awesome. It's massive and it feels filled to the brim with like just activity and things going on, just with like NPCs and stuff going around. Shout out to their dedication to having an entire quest in the main story quest built around tacos. You gotta love that. Like shout out to like I
mean, there were plenty of I remember plenty of side quests and main quest things early on where I was going out and getting ingredients for people and just
this one you just go to like what somebody says is like the best taco place and it's a whole quest and leads to an interesting like conclusion to that quest that leads to like in your first interaction with one of the main antagonists. Really cool stuff as far as it, but when you get out to like kind of the other area, so the story of Dawntrail is you've been recruited.
Do you want to stay more spoiler free on this one?
This is top level spoiler free ish. Like if you read the base description of the synopsis,
I'm just gauging where you're going in terms of
deep.
Like, am I throwing a spoiler tag on this part of the episode
good without the spoiler tag. Basically, you've been recruited to help somebody claim the throne of this continent spanning nation, and it's part of a contest, and so you're going through the different areas and helping your candidate claim basically the throne. And so as you're going through the different areas, you're taking part of some trials and stuff. But really the core crux of this is that, and what I'm trying to get at is I've gone to 2 places, but I've only gone through half the map on each of those. It's built for you to come back later and then take and look over and discover the rest of the map. Both areas are like that. So they're both split in half, and are set up to essentially, you go through, you do that, the story quest in that area, a couple of other quests unlock, and then like that's it. Like you're supposed to go back and then start the main story quest up again and go to the next area. And so I've done that twice. I'm at the first dungeon now. And it's honestly, I think that it's a very different pace from Endwalker for sure. This is not like the fate of the world or existence, hanging in the balance. So it's very much not the scope and scale is much smaller. There's a lot less of a like deep personal revelations for these characters because we've been with them for 10 years. Like they kind of know who they are, but it really is about exploring new people or exploring new places, meeting new people, engaging in different cultures and kind of finding the reason behind this competition and why it exists.
Remind me, because I feel like either we talked about this or I gleaned it from some of the pre-promotional stuff. In the competition that is like to determine who the new ruler of this land is, am I correct in recalling that like part of the conflict is different scions are on different sides of the fence on this? Do you get to pick which side you go on, or is that driven by the story?
No, that's driven by the
locked
story.
Into one. Okay.
Yeah. The scions that you are aligned with, and this isn't really a spoiler. If you get to the point where you're playing Dawntrail, you already figured this out. The twins, Alphino and Alize, as well as Kryle, who is the little like cat-eared jacket-wearing gal. She's the Pictomancer.
Oh, she went Pictomancer.
She went Pictomancer. Yeah, she's Pictomancer. She has her own custom Pictomancer kit. It's cool.
Sure.
Yeah, so she is that.
She is the most realm-like of the crew. I would suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have Kryle, the twins, and I'm trying to think. That's it. A character from the from Endwalker, one of the Gleaners, Erenval, is one of the characters as well who's with you on your part. He's actually from Tural, which is cool. Like basically, it's like he had a different kind of accent because he's from Tural, and people have that kind of accent there. And you meet his childhood friend Wook Lamont, who is your candidate. That's part of like the pre-story quest stuff for Dawntrail.
So then what, like Ishtola and Thancred?
Ishtola has not shown up yet.
Oh, okay.
But Thancred and
Ungiarth or whatever.
Urianger.
Urianger,
is those two have been like recruited to work with the other one who like not really spoiler, but he is a former like member like he went from Tural to Sharlayan to learn from the Archons there. And so he has a connection to Sharlayan and it explains kind of like his reason for wanting to become leader of Tural.
Gotta ask for the Chloes of the world. Estinian, anywhere to be seen so far?
He's not on anybody's side. He's just there exploring and doing cool stuff.
How about Grahatia?
Grahatia stayed behind, but from the trailer, we can guess and surmise he will at some point join us there.
Gotcha.
In the trailer, like the promotional trailer, he is shown trying to eat a taco. Before one of Kryle's Pictomancer things like upsets him and he drops his taco.
Sure.
So.
Cool. So you're having fun with it?
Yeah, it's absolute blast.
Have you gotten into the super high-tech sides of the new world yet? That I know I've seen in the FF set or FF9 related stuff that I remember seeing.
As far as like the high tech stuff, no. Okay. But there's been a lot of like, how do I put this? There's a lot of
the duties and fights and stuff are 9 coded.
Not yet. Enemies? I assume most of that will be post MSQ.
Okay.
A lot of Viper's skills are based off a lot of like Zidane's like Thief Blade skills. Not his thief skills, but particularly his like heavier weapon skills.
His limit breaks and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I don't know. It's definitely something as you play more, I'm certainly curious to like know where this story is going and stuff, but as we touched on last week, I'm just not particularly eager to jump into it myself. You have your collector's edition statue right up there if you want to like bring it into frame for our video viewers.
I will.
We can show that off for people. Now, we've got your guy there against my guy from Endwalker that I can pull up here.
Yours has way more like to do about it.
Mine was very much a end of an era kind of thing vibe going. But yes.
Does your sword or shield pop off of yours or no?
Actually, I don't know. I don't know if the sword does. I know like the like this thing does. The spell component thing does.
Both swords are able to be popped out and are fitted to also be in reverse grip, which fits within the Viper move set.
Nice.
So
very cool.
Yep, he's just sitting up there.
Indeed. Any final thoughts on Dawntrail before we move over?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think the last thing I want to say is like I understand that some people have been mixed about it. I can see why, but for me, this is just really like a great new adventure for the characters and like I mentioned last week, and I'll also say one of the reasons I didn't hop right into the main story quest is because I had some trepidation. It's impossible for them to one-up Endwalker. I just don't think you can.
Sure.
This is really a great way of, and I think a great start to doing something completely different. Not completely different, but doing something very different in the vein of we're transitioning away from the world that we've known for 10 years. We're transitioning away from continents and people and factions that we've known for 10 years. We're introducing brand new cultures that are that have some similarities, but are also very different. And I think that there's a lot of consideration that is being put into that from the team. I will also say, Soken is out of his bag on this one. Holy crap. I turned off my mount music, which is music that plays while you're on a mount, specifically based off of that mount. Mm-hmm. I have turned it off completely because I just want to be engrossed in this soundtrack. I cannot wait to hop into a battle because the battle soundtrack for Dawntrail is unbelievably great. He is just out of his mind great on this entire soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
It has been phenomenal from beginning to end.
FF16 took him to a different level.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like Endwalker was like, oh, a lot of like familiar things. This is all new stuff. No, all new instrumentals, incredible stuff, and just like has a great new fun, like the frenetic feeling of it is just off the charts. Like it just feels like consistently like popping off at all moments. And then there's this softer music that is just beautiful, and it's really a great way of showcasing, yes, this is a new world. We're not in the same place anymore, in a way that I don't think they've done as successful as before. This does feel like a new world. Like whether it's the topography, architecture, everything feels brand new. Everything, assets, top to bottom, feels so brand new, and I'm just loving it.
Very cool. All right. Then we will move on. I'll look forward to hearing kind of updated thoughts as you continue plugging away through that one as well. As I mentioned kind of at the top of the show, I, inspired by upcoming release of the Veilguard, was like, I don't remember much of Dragon Age 1, 2, or Inquisition. So let me jump back in and kind of get a little refresher. And the first thing I did was I booted up the like Dragon Age Keep, where it's like, hey, we can't do the import your save from Dragon Age 1 and 2, so recreate your save state from that in this thing. I did not remember like any of the things from Dragon Age 1 or 2 either. So I just kind of went with whatever I had in there and was like, all right, we'll just wing it. But it was still fun jumping into Dragon Age Inquisition. I very much was just kind of like, I'm just going to kick it to story mode in terms of difficulty and stuff. I'm not really going to stress about this at all. I'd forgotten how massive like the first Hinterlands area is, in terms of like, oh, you can just spend 40 hours doing everything in here kind of area of the game. I very much like, I feel like the first time around I did a much better job of like switching up my party so that I was kind of like improving my relationship with all the different characters. And then I was also like checking in with a bunch of those characters way more often back at home base. This time around, I just kind of didn't bother with that. I pretty much, for the most part, unless like I was required to use somebody, was running with like, I was playing a rogue Inquisitor, a human rogue Inquisitor, and I was running around with Varric, who was my kind of archer rogue, where I was using the double daggers. Cassandra was my like heavy warrior, and then I was running around with Vivienne as my mage, and pretty much for the most part stayed with them. So like, very rarely was doing anything with Blackwall, so I didn't bother ever really going down his like big reveal and stuff like that. Though I did recall it. Didn't really do much with Iron Bull, which drastically changed something that happened to me when I went to the Trespasser DLC, I believe. And yes, spoilers for a 10-year-old game. Iron Bull dead now because he turned on me, and I had to face him in the final Trespasser stuff. And that was the other thing. Like going into this, I originally played Dragon Age Inquisition back when it came out, and it was my game of the year back in 2014. Mm-hmm. But I didn't revisit it when like the DLC that they did for it started coming out. So there was, what was it? There's like going into the Deep Roads DLC bit. There was a whole new area that had like the Jaws of Hakkon and like history of like the previous Inquisitor stuff that I'd never really played through before. And then the big one is like the post-game Trespasser DLC that like, hey, we're jumping forward a couple years and you're going to do that section. So I liked I liked that in that it gave an in-world discovery of Solas's betrayal that like the audience got from beating the original game, but unless you were the very, you know, small minority of people that were like a female elf that could romance Solus,
and made the right decisions to do all that.
Yeah. I don't think the Inquisitor, like everybody knows that Solus left, but like the audience knows that he's the big bad, but the that kind of kicked everything off, but like your characters don't. So I like that the Trespasser DLC basically like closes that loop for the characters and kind of sets them on this kind of mystery of like what's going on, even as we the player know what it's driving towards. I ended up really liking that kind of from a narrative perspective, even if it was like, okay, well, like a lot of this could have been saved by a conversation instead of like the Qunari just coming in and trying to immediately go to war and immediately like assuming that the Inquisition is, you know, working on behalf of the Dreadwolf, aka Solas's kind of character.
It has a lot to do with like the overall politics of like, you kind of saved the world, but now don't forget the world wasn't in a like solid place, and a lot of the activities of Inquisition upset a lot of status quo. A lot of like the whole like problem with the beginning of Inquisition is the Chantry needed to deal with what the hell was happening with the Mage Rebellion, and that blew up into a completely different thing that now leaders of the Chantry, leaders of the mages, and leaders of basically a lot of people were dead, and left a lot of like power vacuums happening. Just because like you saved the world didn't stop those power vacuums from vacuuming. Yeah,
I don't know if this was like something that got patched in when they added the Trespasser stuff, but like before I jumped into the Trespasser stuff, I did not as the original end credits roll kind of thing, and it starts kind of giving you like here's where everything, here's how your decisions have played out this story. I did not recall Leliana becoming the divine Victoria to replace the divine Justinia that is one of those power vacuums. I did not recall that from like my original playthrough, but that's how this one ended.
It's one of it's not determined necessarily by your choice. It's partially on like decisions you make about other characters as well. So Liliana, she's a counselor. So your interactions with Cassandra and Vivian make a big impact into who takes up that role. For me, it was Vivian who took it.
Oh, okay.
As both that's kind of like an interesting solution to the mage issue in question.
Yeah, in mine, Vivian went off to start it. Like she basically went to become a Grand Enchanter of a new circle, like that is basically going to be in opposition to the College of Magi. So that's what she's doing. And Cassandra went to basically like refound the Seekers and try and kind of like bring them back to their former glory before they were kind of corrupted.
So you have that going on. So for me, it was Vivian who ended up becoming my Divine Mother. And then that leads to like that interesting play because you have, it turns out having an organization that answers to no one but questions everybody causes some ruffled feathers and concerns.
Sure, yeah.
Especially when their leader has unbelievable amounts of magical power that is tied to the Fate itself. Like, big questions about what's going on with that.
Yep.
And in the backdrop, you have the entire, Qunari invasion starting.
Again, another one.
I
romanced Josephine in this run.
Hells to the dude. I love Josephine.
She was, I was out there helping, restore her family name and all that fun stuff. Went and saw an opera in the DLC.
You fought a duel.
Fought a duel on her behalf, yeah. She was not happy about it.
Which is weird if you're a mage. So this is my thing. I was a Qunari male mage. Okay. And so in livery, the nice fancy clothes, my bulging body was about to break out of them, and then all of a sudden it's and I'm in a duel. And it's aha.
That was based on trophies that were popping for me this time around. I think I got a better option in the like winter circle sequence where you're like having to kind of like sneak around the
Yes.
palace and like find like I managed to find kind of all of the different pieces of blackmail, so I was able to basically have all of the parties there make a truce and kind of like work together, which is I think like the best possible option. And it also, I got the trophy for like 100% approval, so I did not I did not lose too many points as I was running around in like the forbidden areas. I sided with the mages overall, which also might be another factor of like why some of the power plays kind of, you know, leaned away from the Templars or something like that. But yeah, like I said, I barely did anything with Sarah. I never used Cole. Cole's always just a weird like fucko for me.
Cole's just such I love Cole's concept, and I love Cole's like his comic narrative, like, and like novel narrative origin is very, very cool. I did not feel great about the way it was executed in Inquisition. Yeah. Sarah, I can't stand that goddamn accent, and it pisses me off all the goddamn time.
Sure.
On paper, like,
fun, just a very fun character.
Cool character, great idea, great concept. The moment she opens her mouth, I want to punch her. I'm like, I don't know how you took Cockney and said, let's make it worse, but you did, and I hate you for it. Despite that, like, I do love Red Jenny. I love a lot of that idea of like elven liberation. Mm-hmm. Although I do agree with Solus, which is she doesn't go far enough. She's doing a little clearly, like very self-aggrandizing, like Robin Hood type exactly. shit.
She's doing the Robin Hood vibe.
Yeah, and in reality, she needs to go full on revolution. As somebody whose OG Dragon Age Origins character was City Elf, like I get that, I feel that. Viva la Revolution.
Yeah. Trying to think what some of my other big things this time around.
Ooh, so I'm a bit curious. So if Liliana was your divine mother, mm-hmm. how did they handle the circle of mages? So Vivian was mine, and so her whole thing was she allowed the circle of enchanters to like kind of reform mm-hmm. around her within the Sunburst throne. So it's like the mages are less of a you are on your own, but we're also going to jail you. And now they have a more centralized position within the chantry.
Yeah, I don't really recall the specifics. I feel like we kind of like, because one of the things was like we uncovered that the Seekers like created the, you know, the tranquility, the right of tranquility kind of thing, and couldn't undo it. So
also Cassandra hates Vivian in mine.
Oh yeah,
because that leads to Cassandra leaving the chantry.
I mean, yeah, for I think because like Cassandra, Varric, and Vivian were like my core crew. I think their like bond or whatever, like they were on more or less good terms with one another. Like I said, I think the like this circle is out there and basically like not being as heavily policed anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's how that ended. But yeah, like I said, Vivian kind of goes to create her own circle opposite of the College of Magi. And is like, there's probably some conflict, and there will, you know, undoubtedly be some power plays or whatever on that side of things. The Inquisition ultimately decides to kind of become like the personal guard to.
Oh, that's the decision you made?
Liliana, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I chose to disband it.
Yeah, I didn't bother with that.
I'm interested. Why did you choose to make the Inquisition? Like, why did you choose to preserve the Inquisition?
The answer was effectively like, I think there's still good we can do. And so that was the end result was, okay, they'll become Divine Victoria's like personal guard.
Interesting. So when you choose to disband, you just officially disband. Unofficially, everybody stays in touch and continues to do like other things.
That makes sense, especially with like the little epilogue or whatever, the little end credit scene of like all of your advisors come back together and you put a knife down on to Vinter Imperium kind of thing. It's like, there's your tease for the next game
for sure,
coming out in 10 years.
Yeah. Not happening the way you thought it would at all, because David Gator fucking left. left.
Yeah.
So
I mean, well, we have seen like the opening, story at least seems to be in the Tevinter Imperium, so at least they're doing some kind of beat there.
seems very heavy Tevinter this time around. From I was watching some stuff where they talked about like the characters. So in the trailer, they gave everybody the kind of rogue archetype that they showed you also has a connection to like a Tevinter organization called the Black Dragons.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of like Tevinter themed stuff going on this time around. Like I think Tevinter's playing a bigger part.
I mean, yeah, like in that, like the characters, because you're in the Veilguard, your character can basically share a background with any of your companion characters in the same way that like in Dragon Age Inquisition, you could pick your extra kind of your focus of like abilities. Like as a rogue, I could pick to be either like the Tempest rogue or the Assassin rogue or the Artificer rogue or whatever. And like Artificer would make me have the same stuff as Varric. Tempest would have had the same stuff as Sarah, and I went with Assassin, which is why I never needed to use Cole.
Makes sense, yeah.
And so it's that kind of like, oh, like, yeah, you will have something in common with one of your party members. And for what they showed, it's you are the Tevinter Dragon alongside the female mage detective or whatever that you meet in that opening sequence was also there in Tevinter. So I imagine other characters are probably going to have other different flavors and other backgrounds and stuff like that. But at least in what they're showing. And again, like they're kicking you off in Tevinter to show like, yeah, here's all the crazy technology stuff that Dorian came from and all that.
Which is cool. I think that's really cool. The thing that I'm not sure how I feel about is there's a lot I don't feel great about Veilguard from what I've seen. One is like 3 party, like you and 2 other party members, they're mass affecting it. I feel like that takes away a dichotomy of like some freedom for you to kind of like how you want to play around. That's just me personally. I know other people don't have that issue.
I mean, I will say, especially going back to Dragon Age Inquisition here, like I would have felt if I didn't have that option and if I was trying to like play a more balanced run with like all of my characters and kind of give all of the party members equal time, I wouldn't have been able to have Varric with me for most of the time because I was playing as a rogue, and I would feel like, hey, there's no point in me having a second rogue in this party because I need a warrior that can do the bashing things, and I need a mage that can energize and do the Veilfire puzzles and stuff like that. And so like having a rogue who could unlock the doors and kind of do that stuff, like it felt balanced to always have a rogue, a close range rogue, a ranged rogue like Varric or Sarah, and then like your warrior and your mage. It will be interesting when you're limited to 3 people. How is that going to affect party composition? Are you going to always do a rogue, a mage, and a warrior, or are you going to be like, all right, well, yeah, we'll just run 3 rogues, sure, why the hell not? And how negatively is that going to impact things? We'll see. But yeah, Dragon Age Inquisition, it definitely feels like a 10-year-old game in terms of like a lot of the combat stuff. But it was fine. I like an aspect that was like cool, and if you're playing on higher difficulties, probably would have gotten way more play for me, as I think it did the first time around. But I almost never went into the like tactical mode of like, let me go ahead and like pause and decide, okay, you go here, you go here, you go here, and attack these people. It was always just like I was just always doing the like hold R2 and like push all the use all my skills and wait for the powers to kind of revive and stuff. So yeah, like I'm not too worried about the more action focused combat of the Veilguard. I was never one that had a huge problem with Dragon Age 2 going super action focused.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Because like the gameplay of the Dragon Age games was never the thing that like was the big selling point for me. It was the character interactions, it was the intrigue, it was the big grandiose choices that you're making. The big thing that I think Mass Effect has over Dragon Age has always been, well, I was following my shepherd through that trilogy, whereas like yeah, the hero Ferelden in this from the first game was in a relationship with Leliana that did not get brought up until the post-Coda thing of like the Divine Victoria still like had her open affair with the hero Ferelden. Like that was the first time I remember seeing like the hero Ferelden get mentioned.
So quick question then, for your hero Ferelden, did you ever do the thing with you? I mean, did you do the thing with Morgan where she had your kid?
I don't recall. I don't think so.
Okay,
so I don't know.
Then interesting. So who died for you then against the Archdemon?
I don't recall. Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, again, I didn't like Loghain never shows up because I'm pretty sure I killed him. And
does Alistair show up?
Yeah, I don't think Alistair. I mean, I never saw Alistair in this, so yeah, Alistair might have.
I think you might have had Alistair killed,
sacrifice. Yeah,
die for you
as the warden. Yeah. Yeah, again, I don't recall. I didn't go fully through like what all choices I'd made in the Dragon Age Keep, so like I didn't pay too close attention to that.
I played so much Dragon Age Origins that I have like a definitive playthrough, so I remember every major choice I made. So
I definitely remember I did one playthrough where I did the thing with Morgan and the kid.
So and
it was like that was a fun thing. Like I'd forgotten Morgan like returns here. I'd also forgotten that like Flemeth is.
Does she have a kid at all with her this time?
She did not. No.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you did not do that. Nobody did the ceremony with her. So I mean, Alistair probably died. That's interesting. My warden.
Or actually, maybe is one of the ways you can do it. Alistair has the kid with Morgan.
Yes,
I might have done that. I don't recall.
Well,
because again, like in the Dragon Age Keep thing, I was with Leliana, so I wouldn't have been with Morgan.
Did you have a quest where you had to chase Kieran, Morgan's son, through the mirror, and they met Flemeth?
No, I don't recall that.
Then you did not. Then you certainly did not, because that is a major quest that happens in Inquisition if Morgan has a child.
Gotcha. We went like Morgan led us to the Alluvian and Amir and we were not chasing anybody that way. So yeah.
Yep. So that means that's interesting.
Apparently no Morgan child in mind.
Yep. Or my hero Ferelden, romance Morgan, left with Morgan in the Witch Hunt DLC, and was missing from Inquisition because he was on a journey to discover how to break the calling.
Yeah, I think that's there was probably like one or two references to my hero Ferelden doing that, which is why like there's no, but like it was jarring at the end of the game for like the post, the end. Like here's where everybody went after this, for it to be like, and Leliana kept having an affair with the hero Ferelden. I was like, oh, okay, so he's back, or he's around, or like where's he been for this whole Inquisition thing we were doing?
So interesting. So when you have to recruit your warden for the questline Inquisition, was it just that French speaking dude for you?
Stroud?
Yeah.
No, Hawk was there. Like Hawk showed up.
Hawk shows up, but then there's also Stroud, right? The warden.
Hawk was the one at Skyhold. Like Varric basically like called a friend.
Yes,
brought Hawk in, and then we went to find the warden that they were talking about. And yeah, it was Stroud.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that confirms it for sure, because if Loghain was made a warden, and doesn't sacrifice himself,
it'd be him instead of
Stroud. He shows
Stroud.
up there. If Alistair is a warden and doesn't do that, then he shows up there as there. Or if he survives and he is the king of Ferelden, he shows up in Act 1, at the end of Act 1.
Yeah, I think I remember that from my first playthrough.
Yeah. He shows up at the end of Act 1. So if he's not neither of those, then you sacrificed Alistair. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Who did you have, a male hawk or fem hawk?
Male.
Male, solid.
And like when it's like create your character for Hawk, I just was like default. I think I did default plus the thing on his face or something like that.
There you
go. I was like, I'm not gonna. There's no point in me worrying about a character creator for a game that I played even longer than a decade ago that I don't recall.
Fascinating.
I did pick up a couple weeks ago. The whole trilogy was on sale on Steam for $10 total. So I picked it up thinking like maybe I'll like really go back through everything. Let's see how it plays on Steam Deck, and none of it's been rated for Steam Deck. So I was like, all right, maybe I'm not going to bother with that. But I did pick them all up, and I have them all. So if I really wanted to go back and kind of like try and do a full like, here's my new canon that I'm going to go with, I could, but I think it will more like they've said basically like Dragon Age Keep isn't going to carry over into the Veilguard, and you're basically just going to load up the Veilguard, and you can go with like with the Mass Effect 3, you can go with like whatever the default choices are, or they'll give you kind of like it'll probably be like a Dragon Age Keep thing built in. So it'll be like, hey, make the big choices that you made from your previous games, and we'll use those as your baseline. But yeah, I did not remember what choices from 1 and 2 were really feeding into this playthrough. So I was like, all right, I'm along for whatever ride is here.
Yep. So 2, fun note, at launch, there was a bug where if you chose to customize your Hawk and you were Kunari male, it would swap your voice to the other voice.
I remember there being like issues at launch of like the Hawk imports and stuff like that.
There were so many issues at launch. That game launched so bugged. Yeah. It was awful.
Yeah.
It was like Bethesda jank levels of awful. Oh my gosh, it was terrible.
Even now, all these years later, game crashed as much as Starfield crashed for me, which was a lot.
That's a lot.
I think in particular, I think it wasn't like really like the hours of my game is like 500 plus hours because the timer never stopped when I was putting the game into rest mode and stuff, like when I was putting the PS5 into rest mode. It just like kept ticking away. But yeah, after like if I would put something into rest mode and then like come back to the game, it would almost always come back and be like, your connection to the Dragon Age Origin, whatever the online network is, lost, like reconnect. But it didn't, like, I never bothered with that because I wasn't doing any multiplayer stuff or anything like that. And then, a scene or two in, it would just hard crash and be like accept and report, whatever, and send it off to the developers. And I was like, all right, whatever. I'd reload the game, and I never lost like a ton of progress or anything like that. There were a couple weird bugs that I ran into late in the game where like I was running around Skyhold and like suddenly anybody I could talk to or interact with would just disappear. Like their icons would still be on the map. And this was especially like late game. Like I think it was after I beat the game, but before I went into like the Trespasser DLC, where it is like, hey, you're going to jump in 2 years in time and you're not going to be able to kind of go back from that. So I was like trying to go around and like talk to Iron Bull and talk to Blackwall and see if like there was like a story beat that I could kind of do with them. And like I went to where like Blackwall's spot was, and Blackwall was nowhere to be found. So I was like, oh, did they just still do the thing where he just up and disappears? And like, so I'm like looking around his little barn to see if there's like a letter or something there where he's like, and I just couldn't find him. And then it was like realizing that, I just couldn't interact with anybody, and all like the shops were gone and everything like that. And it was just like, I think the game is just bugged. And sure enough, I restarted it and everybody's back. But yeah, I never got the like fun reveal that like Blackwall isn't really Blackwall and stuff like that.
Dude, that one broke my heart. I never emotionally recovered from that betrayal. To the point where like anytime I talked to Blackwall after that, he was like, I really appreciate you giving me this chance. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
Shut your fucking face. I can't believe you motherfucker. You disgust. Like, my Inquisitor was so fucking mean to Blackwall after that. And Blackwall's like, I deserve it. It's like, yeah, you fucking do. How fucking dare you?
Yeah. I did appreciate that, like, when you go into the Trespasser DLC and you can, like, reconnect with your friends, like, Blackwall isn't there, and you can find paperwork that's like, where Blackwall went. And it's like, turns out Blackwall wasn't Blackwall. And you basically get, like, his backstory there. And, like, in the character select screen, it's like Tom Rainier or whatever it is, like, whatever his real name is. But he's, like, X'd out and basically, like, not available to join your stuff. So, like, in the Trespasser stuff, he wasn't there, Cole wasn't there, and obviously Solus wasn't there. So I was already like, I was like, well, glad the 3 people that I mostly use are all here, because I'm just gonna stick with them. So yeah, it was fun to revisit, and I'm very glad I will have a lot of this like fresh in my mind come end of the year when I'm playing the Veilguard. But yeah, it was a nice like, oh yeah, I like, there's still a lot I like about this game, and there's still a lot I like about like that era of BioWare, that I hope they're able to kind of like recapture some of it. We'll see how that all plays out.
Yep, I made Rainier go to become a warden. I was like, you mother, get the fuck out of here. Like, you will join the wardens after I'm done using you.
Mhm.
Then you'll go. And then I sent him off.
Yeah.
And I was like, you redeemed yourself. Now go be a warden.
Yeah, I think that, like, again, going back to the like Mass Effect being like your character through and through, it was like, it's just always weird of like, okay, yeah, your character in the Dragon Age series is the hero for Elden, and then the champion of Kirkwall, and then the Inquisitor. It's like, okay, well, now you're doing a hard reset each game to make me like reinvest in like a character and like the world of that character and stuff like that. And that was always like I don't like that, but I do like the other characters popping up. Like, I love Liliana being part of your council in this one. I love when Morrigan pops up at the ball and basically like kind of gives you some insight and then joins your council for a little bit there.
I enjoy when Colin tries to convince you, hey, we should all be cops, and I get to be like, nah, motherfucker.
Sure, yeah.
Your cop days are over, Colin. You're off the force, motherfucker.
Yeah. It's lots of fun. It was also very funny. Just like especially after much like Critical Role stuff in recent years and stuff, just immediately hearing like a Laura Bailey character and being like, that's Laura Bailey right there. and sure enough, like, yep, that's one of like 3 characters she's playing. Like, she plays Bianca, the real Bianca, not Varric's bow or crossbow Bianca. It's just like, yep, that is just Laura Bailey, just doing a Laura Bailey voice. And she's also like she's like the dwarf that will come and kind of like help you do crafting in Skyhold and stuff like that. Also, just a weird thing, going back to the idea of like, okay, like, you start out the game in Haven as like your base of operations, and like then you get to a point where Haven gets attacked and you go off to Skyhold, and just being like, oh, like I had forgotten how much time was spent at Haven, I guess.
Oh yeah. The entire first act is at Haven.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was, and then okay, yep. Now the rest of the game is like opening up.
Weishaupt Fortress, which is great.
Yep.
I wish that. And it really speaks to like where I found like my personal like why I don't consider Inquisition as high as I consider 1 and 2. For me is because of things like Weishaupt Fortress. Like, okay, I'm doing all this stuff to like improve it, and like there's no like real visual representation of that.
Yeah, I didn't like. It's like, okay, pick. Oh, you can upgrade the garden. Do you want to allow it to have more planters that you can like grow seeds in, or do you want it to do some other thing? I was like, well, I'm going to go ahead and use more planters because that seems the more practical option. And then like, open or upgrade the courtyard. And do you want it to, have more room for, soldiers to kind of like rest up, or like, and I'm like, I like, neither of these really matter. So yeah, there was a lot of that of like, I don't know, like what the actual choice is here. And yeah, there's only like 3 upgrades to the keep that you really get. And it's like, none of them really are too impactful. Like, the thing by the end of the game, I'm sitting on like over 100 points of power. I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with all this?
Yeah, there's a lot of like point sync, as well as like the entire idea of like quote unquote readiness score, like power like that entire scaling.
I mean, yeah, like also I mean, like I had all of the abilities I needed and like max out, so I probably had another 10 ability points that I also didn't like need or use. Like, there's no point dumping them into other skills that I wasn't really equipping or using. So
yeah, I think there's just like there's some interesting questions about the design of that game and like making it, but at the same time, it was being made in Frostbite, which is, as Jason Schreier greatly details, a bitch of an engine to try to use for anything other than first-person shooter.
Yep, indeed. All right. Finally, a little bit of Unicorn Overlord.
Yeah,
You were real high on Aegis Rim 13 Sentinels, right?
you better believe I was.
Yeah.
One of the best games of that year.
Remind me the gameplay in that. Is it like a tactics game where it's like, oh,
Yes.
you go around the map, but like the battles kind of like just play out based on whatever, like you're not going through and like selecting the attacks and stuff. It's your characters go into battle and then the battle kind of happens automatically based on like, I'm going to give the like, based on the gambit system a la Final Fantasy
No.
12 kind of thing. Okay.
No,
Well, that's
you
how
select. You go into. You move people
it
around.
puts you in turn-based mode.
Not a turn-based mode necessarily. You move around and then you say, "I want to do this maneuver." It's very much FF Tactics
Okay.
style of tactical combat.
Gotcha.
You meet people around the map based on their mobility, get to enemies, and then use abilities. And like you have them squared out, like if it's a long range ability, short range ability, etc.
Okay.
But it's very bare bones in graphical sense.
Okay. Unicorn Overlord is partially that. It's very tactics driven of, okay, you go into like a battle stage and you can deploy you're deploying units and each unit has like a little 2x3 grid, so you can have theoretically up to 6. I think it really only goes up to 5, but you can basically have like a few characters, and like it starts at like 2 characters in a unit. And so you can pair up like a warrior and an archer kind of thing. And you can direct them around the battlefield to attack enemies, to, garrison or capture like a tower point or something like that. But when they actually engage in combat, it's much more auto-generated in terms of like the attacks that happen. It's based on whatever skills those characters have equipped. You are not selecting attacks and you're not doing anything there. You can go in and customize those things, again, a la like the Final Fantasy XII Gambit system or something like that, to say, okay, yeah, Archer, I want you to prioritize flying enemies, or I want you to prioritize, thief enemies or something like that. You can do that kind of controlling, but it basically just relies on whatever you've determined, and you go into the battle and it's like, all right, your guys attack, the enemies attack, and the fight ends, and either you won, you lost, or you drew, or you like there's degrees of like, did you win and actually like kill the opposing forces? Great. Okay, those opposing forces are off the battlefield. Did you win but didn't fully kill them? Okay, they've been knocked out and now they have to kind of like rest up and recover a little bit.
Interesting. Okay.
And if you go and attack them again, you basically get like a first strike. So you get
Okay.
like kind of like all of your characters will attack before they can do anything.
So you can do a thing where you knock them out with long range, and then you move your close range in and get like a free attack and wipe them out.
Yeah, or you can just take your long range people again and just like go in and attack. And like you, with each one, there's a little bit of like a Fire Emblem vibe to it in terms of like the game will kind of give you like, here's how much damage we estimate you doing, and here's how much damage we estimate the enemy doing, and you can choose, like you can switch up like your formation a little bit, or you can basically choose to, okay, I'm gonna have like, oh, I'm only gonna do that much damage. Well, let me see how much my other unit will do, and if I have them attack instead, oh, they're gonna do way more damage because there's like that Pokemon rock paper scissors style, like, oh yeah, cavalry are gonna do really good against this kind of enemy, and warriors are gonna do really good against this kind of enemy and stuff like that. And again, you can like mix and match, and the game will kind of give you like, hey, this is like a really good duo to consider when you like start unlocking new unit types and stuff like that. Broader strokes outside of gameplay stuff, the game, you are like, the little prologue of the game is like 10 years ago or something like that. The queen of a country kind of gets a coup by her like top general, and she sends off her like first knight with her son to kind of like escape. She basically sacrifices herself to buy her son a chance, and you basically kind of take her son's role as the general kind of like took over the rest of the world, and now you are of age and you kind of join the like liberation army to try and like, redeem and fight back. You also start learning that the reason the general was able to like amass such great forces overnight seems to be like magically influenced, where like the first general that kind of comes and attacks you, like you defeat him and he like wakes up as if from a spell and doesn't remember anything from the last 10 years. So like some kind of like manipulation magic is in play, where like this little magical ring that your mother left you like snaps them out of it, basically. So you take them out in battle, and now you can recruit them and they'll join your party, or you can execute them. It does give you like that option of like, do I, spare them or kill them? I'm sparing them so I can, bolster my army and build them up.
Any reason why you would want to kill them?
I don't know.
So we're just dirt bags to begin with?
I mean, yeah, I mean, some of them you can. There might be like different rewards you get if you actually like eliminate them. Because the game also kind of has a lot of like different currencies and stuff that you're balancing. You're like, as you're completing missions and completing battles and stuff like that, you're earning like gold, which you can use to buy equipment for your characters, your party members and stuff like that, and kind of, power them up. You're also earning honor points, which you can use to expand and say, okay, I want this unit to go from being able to have 2 people in it to 3 people.
Nice. Okay.
Or I want to spend some honor to open up another, a 4th unit slot. So now I can have 4 different, groups of people walking around the battlefield. And because in a battle, you are going to be limited. Like every unit has like stamina. And so it's like, oh, I have 6 stamina, so I can get into 6 battles. And then I'm going to need to like rest, and I'm going to need to kind of like basically tap out for a little while that like restores. And so you want to kind of divide your forces, and you don't want to have like just one powerhouse going through and doing everything, because they won't be able to. They'll have to basically take a time out, in which case they kind of, if anybody attacks them, they're in that like, I just lost a fight, so I'm in rest mode kind of thing. So the enemy's going to get like super first strike attacks on me and be able to kick my ass. So being able to kind of like add new units and stuff like that, or expand how many units you have kind of in play at any given time, comes in really handy with honors. You can also use honors to recruit new like mercenaries. So if you're like, oh, it'd be really great if I had another archer type to kind of bolster this unit, but the game will kind of give you characters as you do like side quests, or as you do like the main quest. It'll be like, okay, we're going to introduce you to the archer character in this little side quest, and then when you finish that side quest, he'll offer to join your party or something like that. And it's like, oh, cool, that's a really cool ability to have. He's really good against thief units, because an archer is basically a guaranteed hit, whereas thieves can like use a ability to evade. And so you might like miss if you just try and attack a thief with like a warrior unit or something like that. So
makes sense, yeah.
So it's like, okay, I can use some of the honor that I'm kind of like earning to bolster my militia with kind of non-story units and stuff like that. It's again going to like tactics. It's, hey, you're bringing in other characters that aren't the main story characters that are going to have a narrative and all that stuff.
So is one of the currencies the heads of my enemies? Or
no. So and then the third currency is renown, which is like leveling up your militia. Like you start as like a level E militia, and if you want to, you can go from 2 to 3 characters per military unit at level E, but if you want to go from 3 to 4, you have to get up to level D renown.
I see.
And if you want to move up to, beyond that, you have to get up to level C renown and stuff like that. And basically like your renown level is going to limit what you can unlock and that kind of stuff.
And so taking off the heads of your enemies builds your renown.
Yeah. So yeah, it might be like, oh, you killed this guy. Okay, we're going to give you a little bit more renown than you would have gotten before, or we're going to give you more honor than you would have, gotten, to account for the fact that you've killed one of the people that would have bolstered your forces. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on so far. There's also elements like you go through basically, and you're kind of like saving kind of different parts of the map. So basically you go in liberating a part of the map. And typically when you do that, there will be little like resources that you can find in that area that you can go and basically like grab. There'll be like hidden items or something like that you can like shine, the stereotypical like, oh, there's a shiny thing, let me go like touch it and boom, I've got, a special item here. And when you liberate like towns, the towns are going to have like, a weapon and armor shop, an item shop. And then they have what are called deliveries, where it's like, okay, if you want to restore this town, deliver 3 pieces of wood and 5 fish. And if you like complete those orders, the town gets like fully restored. You get a little bit of rewards for each of those delivery options. And when the town is fully restored, you can like it'll usually unlock like another thing that this town can do. Like the first one you kind of unlock is like, okay, when you fully restore it, it unlocks a ship that will take you like across the sea to another area that you can kind of like explore a little bit. And you can garrison like parts of your party there to and basically like give them gifts if they're garrisoned in a town, to build up your rapport with those characters. And there are, just like a Fire Emblem game, there are like, oh, if you build up your rapport enough, there's going to be a little scene that you can have between your character and this character to get a little bit more of their backstory and stuff like that.
Is it also how you romance characters?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a romance component to the game. The game very much gives you like a female character, like Elaine is your main character, young Prince Elaine, and
can you male or female, or is it always male?
It's always male.
Okay.
And there is a priestess Scarlet that is kind of like a little bit of magic. She's basically over there. She gets kidnapped when like the opposing forces come to your island that you've been like hiding away in for the last 10 years. And my mission right now is basically to try and like get her back.
Gotcha.
And I've been building up my forces to get even to over where she is on the map to try and like recruit her back.
Very Fire Emblem War of the Shadow Dragon.
Yeah.
Like OG, the first Fire Emblem game, like you go and spend 10 years on an island somewhere, like growing up.
Yeah. It very much feels like the game is setting up that she would be like the main love interest for Elaine. And she is the weird, like, she's the one that has the weird anime boob jiggle physics. I'm just like, that's
classic Vanilla Soft.
I don't know why that's got to be in here, but
it's a staple. They made, ever since they made, what was that first one they made? Dragon.
I don't know.
Forgot the first one they made with the Jiggly Boob Witch. Want to know what's funny? Game that doesn't have any Jiggly Boob physics.
The one where everybody's naked?
Yep.
Aegis Rim?
Yeah. Yep. Funny enough, the one where everybody's naked. No, everybody, like, and once again, I want to reiterate, as I've reiterated many times before, there is actually a very important story reason that is like a lampshade. Like, if you understood what that was for, it would spoil the entire game for you. So I can't, it's justified, but I can't justify it without spoiling the entire game.
It's justified in the same way that Quiet's attire in Metal Gear Solid 5 is justified.
No, far more justified than that. Far more justified than that.
You never played Metal Gear Solid 5, so do you actually know why
Yes,
Quiet
I do. I'm
okay.
very familiar with the why.
Okay.
It's so dumb.
You will be ashamed.
You will be ashamed. Just God damn it, because no, this one actually legitimately there's a good reason why, and when you figure out, you're like, oh, that makes sense, but you can't tell people why it makes sense without spoiling the entire fucking game. So in a way, it accomplishes like the Vanilla Soft of like, is this pervy? It's like, no, it's not pervy. It's the least pervy game. But why are all these teenagers naked? I can't tell you why.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Unicorn Overlord. I'm having some fun with it. Again, I'm just kind of like, you go through the prologue, kind of the opening little section, and it's like, okay, what like difficulty do you want? And I was like, I don't really feel like, especially in a game where like combat, like minute to minute combat, I'm not going to have a ton of control over. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of bump it up to story mode and just kind of like, not stress about this. But yeah, I'm having fun with it. It definitely feels like there is a lot going on, and even like one of the first areas that you kind of like, one of the first little side quest things you do seems like it might be like a ongoing like game long side quest, because it's like, okay, I mentioned like, oh, this is the area that you go into, and you kind of get introduced to a Robin Hood type archer. who will join your party when you kind of complete it. The archer is basically trying to take his lands back from a group of bandits that have kind of like moved in, and the head of the bandits gives this like sob story of like his sister was sick and like I had to resort to thieving to buy the stuff and try and help her. And basically he's like, for him, it's, you're given the option of like, leave him to the guards or free him, basically like buy his sob story and let him go. And I was like, well, no, like even if I buy your sob story, you've done a lot of crimes, so you got to do your time. So I send him to the guards, and then like immediately the guards get attacked by the rest of his bandit troop, and he gets like freed. And he seems to be like, I'll get my revenge. And then I've already encountered a whole other side quest area where another person was like, I'm only doing this because my boss needs to get medicine for his sister. And it's like, wait a minute, I've heard this story before. And you're kind of given the same kind of, do I let this person go, or do I, in that one, I did let the person go because the other person that was like joining me on that mission was like, kill this guy. And I'm like, okay, that crime does not meet the time. So I'm going to lean towards leniency on this one instead of murder this guy. And the NPC that like, did not like that I let the guy go free instead of letting her get her bloodlust in. But so yeah, I'm having fun with it. We'll see. It definitely seems like a fun little thing that'll kind of be the next game that I'm playing here for a little while. And I will report back as I learn more and understand more about this game. One thing that it has, but I wish it had like a better version of, is like, I wish I could just optimize everybody's equipment in one go instead of, okay, I've got to optimize one person's equipment and I got to move over to the next character, optimize their equipment and accept it, and then move to another character and optimize and accept it. Especially like in the early game where like I'm getting a lot of like just like simple accessories that'll give a little bit of like defense boost or an attack boost or something like that. And I'm just kind of like stocking up on those to give my now like 15 unit army like good stuff. And also like, in addition to like the currencies you're getting, you also get experience and like you're leveling up, and you're when you level up, you get certain, improved skills and stuff like that, over time. And so even there's like a little bit of a juggling act of like, oh, I need to start using this unit more actively. Like I've had them kind of trailing my crew and kind of like garrisoning and kind of being there in case somebody like slips through my defenses and, tries to take out my camp or something like that. Like they're kind of there as like the last line of defense. But in doing so, they're not getting a lot of the action. So there we're still like level 2 or level 3 or something like that. And I was like, oh, I need to start actually having them fight a little bit more. But yeah, it's a fun little game so far. I like that they give you a lot of like, here's like whenever they introduce new units to you, you will get like little optional mock battles that you can do with those unit types, and basically be like, here's what's really effective with my type or against my type. So you can kind of like learn that. But even with that, I feel like I need a spreadsheet that is like a la the full like Pokemon type chart of like, this is good against this type and this type and this type. This is bad against this type. And this does double damage against these types of stuff. Because it's so much of it's like, I've learned so much so quickly that none of it's sticking.
That's fair.
And a lot of it is just trial and error of like, okay, if I've got these two units on the battlefield, which is going to do the most damage? Let me go ahead and like click this one and like like hover over what it's going to look like if I attack with them, and what's it going to look like if I attack with these guys. Oh, there's also a cool other little component with like archers or with like mages that have like ranged attack components. If you have like them as the leader of a unit, you can use their ranged attack as like a support for like a certain area of the map. Like basically, like if they're a few, people behind your main force, but they're within range, when your main force goes into attack, you'll get like a little prompt of like, do you want to push square? I'm playing on PlayStation. Do you want to push square to like add in air support basically.
Oh, nice.
And it'll usually do a little bit of extra damage kind of at the start of combat. So like, be like, okay, I'm going from by default, if I just kind of attack right now, I'm seeing like my characters will do 32 damage against these enemies. I push square and get that like extra air support from the mage that's right behind them. Oh, now I'm going to do 52 damage.
Nice.
And that's going to fully wipe out this unit. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And there's not really like the cost is that it uses stamina from that other unit as well. So you're going to be limited in, how many times you can do that. But you can also like have that unit post up in a watchtower, which expands their support range.
Okay,
and you can mix and match. So if you have like a wizard and an archer kind of, and you're attacking somebody in the like radius of both of their ranges, you'll start the fight and it'll be like, all right, fireballs coming down and arrows coming down and now you're going to start attacking with your little crew. So lots of cool ways to mix and match the combat stuff, even if you're not actively like picking each attack that happens a turn-based strategy kind of thing.
That sounds really awesome. I definitely want to pick it up at some point and play it. I know it came out earlier this year.
I picked it up on sale a while back. Got it basically half price of what it was. And I didn't play 13 Sentinels, but like they've had a good word of mouth track record the last few games. So I was like, and your brother-in-law John picked it up earlier in the year. And like his kids were really enjoying like the demo of it and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, I'll give this a shot. Since I'm kind of in this, like, at this point, I'm probably waiting for like Star Wars Outlaws or Astrobot are really like there's nothing
Astrobot's
really.
Astrobot's probably more closer to.
I mean, Star Wars Outlaws is end of August. Astrobot is like beginning of September.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Like Astrobot is certainly the one I'm more excited about, but I'll jump in and play a Star Wars game when it comes out.
Everybody who's played the demo, like the vertical slice that they had at SGC have just
really liked it.
Yeah, really blown away by it. So like I'm stoked for it. I can't wait. After the Playroom demo that we got from the PS5 launch was my first intro to Astro. I've just been stoked as hell for this.
Yeah, since there really isn't a ton here in July or the rest of August for me, like this is just another thing. I'm like, okay, I'll jump in and check out this game so I can at least start like filling out a list of 2024 games for eventual end of the year game of the year stuff instead of the half a dozen games that I've played from the past or replayed, a la Dragon Age Inquisition, stuff like that. So I will continue to give thoughts on Unicorn Overlord as we go. All right, I think that is gonna do it for us. Thank you, Cam, for chatting all these video games with me. You can follow Cameron at RevCabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
2 things I want to give a shout out. First off is the artist of that fan art I mentioned earlier is Osat or Osset. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. They are Chinese. They don't have a Twitter account. They have a Weibo, which is how I figured that out.
Okay.
Special shout out to them. I am going to get Trevor the details and
we'll put that in the description.
Yep, put that in the description. Blown away by your fan art. Very, very cool stuff. It's now my background on my computer because I found your super high res one. So it's now the background on my computer and I love it. The second shout I want to give out to is my game coming out of all the demos from like the Steam Fest demos and everything is I Am Your Beast. It is a very much a multi-run type game where a la, I almost had it. Game I was on my top 10 last year. Where you are somebody from hell going to heaven running trials of stuff. I'm trying to remember what it was called. I can just...
Is that Neon White?
Yeah, thank you. Neon White. All on Neon White, very much like one of those like another run type games. The demo blew me away. It's super stylistic, made by like a small group of people, independent studio. Massive shout out to them. It's one of the best games that I've played in a very long time. Definitely captures that like one more run. Like I can do this better. Give me another shot kind of feel to it. That game. To those games, this game captures it perfectly. I'm super looking forward to it coming out later this year. Massive shout out to that team for putting together an awesome demo. The premise is essentially you are a super soldier spy who is being recruited back to come back to for one last mission, and you're saying fuck you, and you're now fighting your former agency as they're invading your forest home. Very cool, very cool. Has some very like anti-Reagan era-esque CIA vibes to it, so massive shout out to it. It's really, really cool, really stylized. Can't wait for the full release.
Sorry, I was curious. I was like, I feel like you didn't talk about Neon White in last year's Game of the Year because it was 2022.
Sorry, 2022. There we go.
Is when Neon White was in your Game of the Year.
That's the last time that we had a game like this, man. I'm really stoked for it. So
it was your number 5 that year, between Horizon and God of War that year.
That tells you right there.
There you go. And obviously Elden Ring was your number 1 that year.
Yes, it was.
Very cool. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. Shout out I will give is That D Plus Show. Cam and I talked episodes 5 and 6 of The Acolyte this last week. And the rest of this month, we're looking at basically kind of trading off between the lead up to Deadpool 3 / aka Deadpool and Wolverine, as well as, so we're going to do, I think, Logan this week for That D Plus Show, and then we'll come back next week and do kind of the final 2 episodes of The Acolyte, and then end of the month we will do Deadpool 2 to coincide with the Deadpool and Wolverine launch. So stay tuned for all that fun stuff on That D Plus Show moving forward. So and then we've also been looking at and starting to think about ideas for August. Don't have them locked in yet, but got some thoughts on what we've got ahead. So yeah, stay tuned for all that fun stuff. Follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please remember to rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.